Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And today we are talking about art history, something that we tend to dabble in, but we don't dive too much in. And today's article is talking about an x ray scan of a Medici that reveals if the painting was authentic or not.
Yeah, so the painting in question is Bronzino's portrait of Duke Cosimo de' Medici. Um, this painting was copied 25 or 24 times, which means that there is one original and 24 identical copies. It was copied repeatedly throughout history. And One of the big issues is the argument all 25 claim to be the real one. Uh, However, the one that's currently being held, I believe, in the Art Gallery of New South Wales,
Yep.
it has managed to use X-ray fluorescence to basically prove that it was the first copy. As and the reason for this is because when Bronzino painted Cosimo de' Medici, he painted him twice on the same canvas. The first time he was commissioned to depict Cosimo as a sort of classic, uh, semi aristocratic, elegant merchant statesman. However, Cosmo was later dissatisfied with this image of himself and instead chose to reinvent himself as a classic military prince. And as such, the painting was painted over to take him from his civilian clothes and repaint him in body armor. And the X-ray fluorescence can show, I believe, on the orange and green image, you can sort of see
Yep.
the rounding out of the head with the hat, the flow of draped clothing instead of the much more tightly poised armor.
You could see that his body position was kind of changed. The eye line
Yeah,
stayed similar, but yeah, it looks
yeah,
like his body position kind of
it's yeah,
changed. And the
yeah,
interesting thing about X-ray fluorescence is what it does is it shoots X-rays at the particles on the canvas, the paint, and basically, given their mineral composition, will start to glow and will produce images similar to this, showing
mm,
their composition. And
yeah.
this one's kind of interesting because it shows the ghost of the first painting that was originally on there,
Hmm.
but it can also tell you the paint types, and it's used a lot in art history because certain paints are made of certain pigments. Like after World War II, a lot of carbon paints, a lot of black paints changed because of the amount of carbon in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
There also was a brown pigment called mummy brown that's no longer used because it involved grinding up literal mummies.
Yes. There have been some fun, interesting things and pigments. Now, also with this painting, just to talk about the history of it and why it is very important, um, just in general. So this is with Cosimo de' Medici as the as the standing Duke of Florence. He is effectively the ruler of a Renaissance nation, and what's interesting about this particular portrait of him is even though he's depicted as a military prince, as a warrior, for defending his people, etc., etc. This is the only time a military prince is depicted without a sword, and the reason for that is Florence relied for its independence, militarily at least, on Charles V. Um, and as such, he is depicting himself as sort of this, warrior prince. He's also not trying to step on any toes and say, I can do without you, Charles.
Yeah,
He's
he's
more,
basically submitting. He's like, I am a warrior prince, but I am not a fighter.
well, it's not so much that I am not it's not so much that I am not a fighter, and so much more as a acknowledgement as to where his military strength comes from. He's showing himself as a military personality, but he's not trying to take up the traditional symbols of sort of kingship as the sword, the crown, the globe and a few others are seen as signs of sovereignty. And when most of your reign is dependent on a foreign king, it's best not to say, hey, you who's better at me at everything and who I rely on for things, we're equals now. You don't want to slight these people. They have egos.
Oh God, you mean world leaders having egos? It's
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Charles V was a Habsburg. He was Holy Roman Emperor, Archduke of Austria, King of Spain, Lord of the Netherlands, and Duke of Burgundy.
And yet somehow more inbred than King Tut. I was gonna try and say his real name, but then I butchered it.
Tutankhamun.
Yeah. So, anyways, he was very inbred, and yeah, the Habsburgs provided a lot of stability, but there's also a couple of other really interesting things
And
that.
and by he we mean Charles V, not Cosmo de Medici. They don't really get into that practice nearly as much as other people.
No, but they did like to breed outward and start moving
Yeah,
out to other families. Like,
uh,
notably, Catherine de' Medici married
yeah,
into the French throne.
yeah,
But anyways, we're not talking about those Medici. We're talking about this Medici. This painting in particular, or more specifically, the underpainting, is believed to be the basis for a later work called Portrait of a Young Man that now hangs in Kansas City's Nelson Atkins Museum. So kind of interesting that the painting may have been scrapped, so to speak, but was still used as inspiration in a later work. And then the other thing I thought of note that was very interesting is how the museum actually acquired this specific copy, and it is a doozy.
yeah. As those of you who watch this segment on our channel know, museums frequently have really weird stories as to how they acquire things.
Especially
And
the
this
British
one,
Museum. You're
and
questionable.
this one, this one really starts to take the cake.
The portrait had long been in private hands, and it emerged in the early 1970s, partially through the diligence of an art historian by the name of Robert Simon, that basically suggested that this was the legitimate version, and he later x-rayed it. But the specific version um, was purchased by the gallery's foundation in 1996 for $1.88.
Yep. Uh, yep. And it was quite the steal too, as it's the only Bronzino in Australia.
That is very interesting because not a
Yeah, it
whole
is.
lot of works make their way down under.
Yeah. And even still, Bronzino, well, he's not as much of a household name as other Renaissance artists like Michelangelo or Da Vinci. Um, as you can see, he is still a very capable, versatile portrait artist, and a large number of essentially nobility and particularly Italian Renaissance nobility would have portraits done by him. I mean, these are the Medici's here. These are
Yeah,
the same people that commissioned Michelangelo to make the David. So suffice to say, they paid for the best.
and you could tell by just looking at the artwork that it is the best. I mean, that's a very lifelike painting.
Yeah.
The colors are beautiful, and you can't even tell that it'd been repainted. That's, I think, truly the mark of a
Yeah.
talented
Mhm.
artist.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that's a good point for us to wrap up. I mean, we talked about quite a bit of the article. We talked about the history of the artwork, and we're branching into different parts of history. Ooh, the art history world. But on that lovely note, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like down below and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. And we'll catch you in the next episode.